Indians working in the US have gotten the biggest shock of their lives, but it may work out to be very well for India, and I'll explain exactly what is happening. So yesterday, President Trump mentioned that any American company hiring foreign workers on H-1B visa will have to pay $100,000 every year to the US government in the form of a fee. Which means every Indian who will be hired by an American company, well, that company in the US will have to pay 88 lakh rupees, not one time, but every single year. Now, this means that practically all the Indians working in the US and are not already US citizens may have to come back, because right now this is a presidential order, and whether it's going to sustain in the US Congress or not, we can't really say. But imagine it does. I'll tell you what will happen. For example, when I speak with the administration at B schools in India like ISB as well as IIMA, the administration is really happy because right now the kind of applicants they're getting to these colleges for the MBA program are absolutely phenomenal. Because 35% of the Indians who would apply to the US every year in search for better MBA are now not applying, and all these people are now studying in India. Similarly, now the best of talent from the world is going to come back to India because companies may not want to hire them in the US. And over the next 5 to 7 years, I would predict that a lot of global companies would then begin to bring investments into India, start setting up companies into India, and quite like how China grew over the past 2 decades on the back of their fabulous talent, which built massive tech companies inside of China which are now going global. The same journey may actually happen for India over the next 1 decade, because 71% of the H-1B applicants are actually Indians and only 12% are Chinese, which is why, while it is really painful for people who have family members in the US working right now in the short term, in the long term, it may be a fabulous golden opportunity for our country, India.
Greetings, my lovely people, and welcome back to my channel. So President Trump's latest executive order to raise the annual fee of HIB visa applicants to $100,000 has sparked panic and confusion among skilled workers and companies. So thousands of skilled workers, especially Indians, they feel that this is not just a policy change, but a potential end to their American dream. Is this move really about protecting American jobs, or is it a strategy that could end up costing the US its global edge? Let's have a look, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing so you never miss any update from my videos. Let's dive into it.
Wow, a $100,000 fee to have the privilege of keeping the US tech and medical industries alive. Here's the truth about H-1B workers. 71% are Indian. Not gonna lie, we're cheap, but we are not cheap labor. Indian H-1B workers average $125K a year salaries. We're not taking American jobs. Let's talk meritocracy. Tech and medical companies want to be competitive. The education system in India versus America is incomparable. I've been an honor student my whole life in North America. Got scholarships to all the universities I applied for. But I studied for 1 year in India and was by far the dumbest in the class. I was put in murga so many times, my thighs still hurt. Desis know what I'm talking about. Teens in India commit suicide for not being in the top 96% in school. Teens in America sniff gas for fun. It's not their fault. India obsesses over education. America is dismantling its education department and gearing kids up to work in factories. Trump's actual plan to get millions of unemployed young men back to work is this.
Well, what we're doing is they're building plants all over the United States. And
see how he didn't say software engineer or IT professional? Because we don't have enough skilled labor in STEM in America. In 2019, Lego surveyed 3,000 8 to 12-year-old kids in China and asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up. They said astronauts. Know what American kids said? YouTubers. This is happening for 2 reasons. Because India didn't bend the knee to the US, even with 50% tariffs, and because 11 Fortune 500 companies are currently led by Indian heritage CEOs from Alphabet, Microsoft, Chanel, FedEx, and more. Elon Musk, a non-Indian H-1B worker, is the wealthiest man in the world. With money comes power. And when you can't earn power the competitive way, you do the weak thing and cut your competition at its knees. So first is jobs. What's next? Spelling bees?
Did you see this video of passengers trying to get off a flight after Trump announced that the application fees for H-1B visas will be $100,000? This happened on an Emirates flight trying to leave out of San Francisco International Airport. That was on the same day that Trump announced that the application fees for H-1B visas will go up to $100,000. Compare that to the fact that historically, the H-1B visa applications has cost between $1,700 to $4,500, and that this new $100,000 annual fee will go into effect starting September 21st. That's why people are rushing to get off the plane, because the way it's being presented is that if you're in the country when the fee goes into effect, you don't have to pay it right now. But if you're outside of the country and try to come back in after the 21st, they're going to check to see if that fee was paid. And people weren't just scrambling to get off flights, people were scrambling to get on flights and being extorted for it. Like people in India with H-1B visas saw the prices of flights soar because there were so many people trying to rush back to the US. Heck, some people who were in India when Trump dropped the news already missed the deadline because there weren't enough flights to get back home. And of course, the big tech companies are also scrambling, asking employees not to leave the country or those who are abroad to come back quickly. Now, there are supposed to be legal challenges, but it doesn't matter. In the meantime, the chaos is the point. Of course, they're saying they're doing all of this because US companies keep hiring foreign workers and undercutting US workers. That is a big, complex conversation that we need to have, and that needs to be had with businesses and how they treat their employees. But Trump's move is always hurting the employee, the people of color, the immigrants. This kind of whiplash from a Trump administration, both for companies and for people, is something that's genuinely making everyone think twice about investing or coming to the US in any way. Because even if they do everything right, they can find themselves in this kind of chaos under this administration.
If you're on or hiring on an H-1B, here's the update. A new executive order says H-1B workers can't enter the United States unless a $100,000 payment is made for that worker. It's framed as reducing abuse and protecting U.S. jobs, but for employers and workers, it functions like a paywall at the border. There are narrow case-by-case exemptions for the national interests, but there's no broad carve-out by industry. So what does that mean in real life? If you're outside the United States with a newly approved H-1B, arrival could be denied unless the $100,000 is paid. If you're already inside the U.S. in valid H-1B status, you can keep working, but international travel just got risky without that payment on re-entry. Employers will think twice before filing, and some may cancel roles or shift them offshore. Healthcare impact. Many frontline RN roles don't qualify for H-1B, but advanced practice nurses and specialized roles do. And physicians often use H-1B when not on a J-1. Teaching hospitals and university-affiliated systems are usually CAP exempt, but CAP exempt is not the same as payment exempt under this order. So academic medical centers, critical access hospitals, and specialty clinics that rely on international clinicians could see onboarding delays, rescinded offers, or program start deferrals. For residents and fellows switching status or changing sites, travel could jeopardize start dates. Patients feel this next. Longer wait times, fewer subspecialties, and more burnout on already short-staffed teams. So what to do now? Employers should talk to counsel immediately about whether a national interest exemption is realistic, whether to pay the fee, and how to handle travel. Workers should avoid non-essential international trips, keep your documents current, and ask HR for a written plan. If you're a hospital leader, escalate staffing risk to your board today and map which departments depend on H-1B clinicians. I'll keep tracking legal challenges and any agency guidance, but in short, this is a policy sledgehammer. Plan accordingly.
The big fallacy is that people hire internationally because it's cheaper to hire immigrants to fill that. No, not for an H-1B visa. That's not why it's the same as us in the film industry doing O-1 visas. You hire because they have a specific special expertise that you need. It is more expensive for me to have to pay $15,000 in legal fees to get the visa. Then I have to fly them back and forth, not just once, because they're not going to come here for a year and never go back. Their contract is going to call for me to send them back and forth regularly.
And it's business class.
And they're generally flying business class. class. Very often when you have those visa holders over here, you're paying for their housing too. It's way more expensive to hire the H-1B visa holders. You're not hiring them. Like if I could hire an American for, $150,000 to do the job, they would. It is very common for big companies to say, great, I'm going to import this guy who's the foremost expert in the world on petroleum nuclides. I don't even know if that's a thing. I'm going to bring them over here and they're going to train all of my people. I would rather have just one of them to train my 50 people. I'm not going to have, if it was cheaper to hire them, I'd have 50 of them instead of training people here. Yeah. But they're way more expensive. It's going to bring in millions of dollars, billions of dollars to the government. If every one of those, think about Amazon alone, 10,000 H-1B visa holders times $100,000 a piece. How much does that bring in? Well, here's how much it's going to bring in: a short period of a burst of money, just like the tariffs. But the long-term implications are going to be devastating, because maybe it's cheaper for Amazon to move a plant over there. And all of that work that those people were training other people to do here, now it just leaves the country. This is what happens when you have a group of financially illiterate people making decisions. They make short-term decisions that bring the cash in today. Then when the country realizes you completely effed us and vote you out of office, somebody else comes in to try and fix it, and you point fingers at them and go, oh, well, it was working great when I was there. No, it wasn't.
The healthcare system is cooked, so the proclamation that was just signed, now requiring companies to pay $100,000 for people on HB1 visas, basically to prioritize Americans to get the jobs. So now everybody's thinking about tech, they're just going to outsource it and da-da. Nobody is thinking about healthcare. Do you guys not understand how many people in healthcare currently are under an HB1 visa? And if these companies do away with them, we don't have enough people to fill those vacancies at this time. So what are we going to do? Nobody's going to be able to see a provider. Nobody's going to be able to seek treatment because we're already flooded. We already don't have enough for what we have. So if the people with the HB1 visas can no longer work, it's gonna get spooky.
Since Indians are the top earners among Asian Americans, let's do as you suggest for Indians. We will compare the number of Indian H-1B visa holders to the total population of Indians in the United States. I know this is really hard to see, but if you don't want to take my word for it, you can find this information on the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services website. In 2019, Indians accounted for 74.5% of H-1B visas. On that same website, this provides information about the estimated number of H-1B beneficiaries in the United States. There's a range in 2019, so to tilt the number in your favor, let's take the lowest number, which is 619,327. So 74.5% of the 619,327 H-1B beneficiaries means approximately 461,398 are Indian. And at that time, there were an estimated 4 million Indians in the United States, which means that 11.5% of Indians in the United States in 2019 were H-1B beneficiaries. But that 4 million includes all Indians in the United States, not just working age. So that's children, working age, and retired. So to find the number of households who have an H-1B beneficiary, I divided by 3.13% because that's the average size of the United States household. So 36% of Indian households have an H-1B visa recipient. The other thing about H-1B visas is they are non-immigrant, but they are dual intention, which means an H-1B visa is a path to applying for a green card and receiving citizenship. So there's no knowing how many more Indian households include working family members who had an H-1B visa but now have green cards or are now citizens. So it would be even higher. But 36% is not null. That is, in fact, more significant than I thought it would be.
So some Americans argue that the American workers will not get a priority in hiring. But on the other hand, experts warn that this will drive talent away to countries like Canada, the UK, or the UAE, nations that are actively opening their doors to skilled immigrants. So the big question is America really closing itself off at the very moment when the rest of the world is opening up?
Companies are now going to have to pay $100,000 per H-1B worker that they have. Trump's base is pretty happy because they don't really care if you're documented or undocumented. They don't want immigrants coming here. Trump is also claiming that this is going to bring back jobs to Americans, which probably won't. You have to understand that H-1Bs are not like evil and stealing your jobs. Tech companies are sending them to H-1B workers because they know they can exploit them. 60% of H-1B workers are paid well below local median wage. So tech companies can pay them less and they can make them work ungodly hours because they know that their immigration status is tied to their employment. So if you lose your job as an H-1B worker, you have 60 days to find a new one, otherwise you're out. The companies that were using these workers to cut costs are not going to just magically start giving these to Americans that are going to ask for more money. They're probably just going to outsource the jobs. Another interesting thing here is the timing of this. So 75% of H-1B workers are Indians, and he has not been getting along well with India recently. So maybe this is retaliatory.
Donald Trump has imposed a $100,000 visa fee and everyone is saying it's going to benefit India and is the end of American tech. But here's what no one is telling you. It will be struck down. This is most likely to be struck down in court or cancelled when the government changes. And he knows this, but he's still doing it. Why? There is a trade deal going on with India and there are almost 700,000 people on H-1B visas. And almost 70% of it is Indian. That's a huge chunk. There is almost $150 billion of remittance flowing from US to India, and it's about 30% of India's total remittances. This visa fee, it's not about jobs. It's an economic threat. Now here's the darker part. There is a hate towards Indians growing in the West. People don't talk about it, but it's there. This is designed to be loud and look like a clampdown on Indians, and it has already worked. His approval rating has jumped from -3 to +7, and when this policy eventually gets cancelled, he will blame activist judges or the opposition, and the hate on Indians will grow even more. At the end of the day, H-1B Indians are dispensable and no one's fighting for them, so it's a win-win. And the worst part, he has changed the game. India did not react when he imposed 50% tariffs, but now he is playing blitz chess with Indian people as pawns. So don't listen to nonsense like this will benefit India. No one is shifting entire tech industry to India overnight. That's for the long game. This game starts tomorrow. India has to make its move now. It's a check, not checkmate.
Donald Trump pissed off all the tech bros yesterday when he announced the $100,000 price tag for new H-1B applications per year. Now, this is going to piss off companies like Amazon, Apple, Google, Meta, who overwhelmingly utilize H-1B visas to fill the holes that U.S. workers can't fill. Now, there is the whole thing with H-1B visas where they pay those individuals routinely less money than they would a U.S. worker, which makes people say they're only doing this to save money, and it's corporations, so they likely are. But these corporations have overwhelmingly supported Donald Trump since he got in office, and now he's shoving that support right back in their face, because for a company like Amazon, who brought in 10,000 H-1B visa workers last year, this is going to cost them more than $1 billion. And I don't care about the company. That's on them. But if Donald Trump starts to lose the support of the tech industry and the auto industry and everything else, everything he wants to do is done.
As someone who's entered in big tech and been around people who have been on H-1B visas, here's my opinion on the executive order passed by Donald Trump. This will not have an immediate effect on H-1Bs who are currently working in the United States. What it will have an effect on are students who are international trying to get an H-1B visa. Unlike what most people are claiming, it is only a one-time fee, which means it doesn't apply to renewals or to people who already hold H-1B visas. But what does this mean going forward? Well, companies are going to have to weigh in how much they're going to pay H-1B visas in the future, and if that is worth a upfront $100,000 hit. There's also a lot of disinformation on whether or not H-1B visas get paid less upfront, and it's not true that they get paid less. They get paid basically the same upfront when they're hired, right? When you hire an H-1B visa, I'm pretty sure you have to pay them the market value of that job. However, in big tech, there's this thing called refreshers. They're typically annual, and what happens is you get a new chunk of restricted stock units that you are going to get invested over the next 4 years. This is typically where big tech shorts their international workers. And along with how much their pay gets increased when they receive a promotion, big tech companies are still able to pay international workers less. And from my personal experience, I don't think that there's a really big discrepancy between the talent pool of international students versus domestic students. So when a big tech company decides to hire international students in droves, what I see is a company that's looking to just be able to pay these workers less down the road. I do think that there is a need to bring in talented H-1B visa holders into our country to make our big tech companies and other companies competitive. However, I do think that it has gotten out of hand, and big tech companies are just going to H-1Bs as the default so that they can save, a couple $100,000 down the line. And I see this one-time $100,000 fee as a way to incentivize initially hiring more domestic workers. I don't think now big tech companies are only going to hire domestic workers, but I think they'll probably hire more domestic workers.
Right now, if you step out of the country, you might not even be able to get back in. They're not going to tell you this on the news the way that they should, so I'm going to tell you. Your boy DT just dropped a whole new hit on the H-1B visa program. That's the visa that a lot of skilled workers, including people from India and other countries, they use it to come here and work in tech, in engineering, in medicine. And I don't know about y'all, but I like the Indian doctors. But anyway, this H-1B visa is the main way that foreigners get into this country to explore their talents. Now, as of today, there's a $100,000 fee for them to pay to be able to do that. So now if you outside the US trying to use that visa, your people gonna have to pay $100,000. They gonna have to get in that bag just for you to get over here. And let's just be real, some of these smaller companies can't afford that. So who gets left out? The average worker. They saying this is to protect American jobs and to make sure Americans get paid first. But let's be real, a lot of those people in India shaped the tech world. A lot of US companies are low-key panicking because they telling their people not to even leave the country. So don't be fooled. This ain't just about immigration. This is about who has access to opportunity, who gets locked out, and how fast the rules can change.
This is a very nuanced conversation, but these companies been taking advantage of that fucking work visa. Yeah, a lot of them been lying and saying, oh, there are no eligible Americans available or skilled to do this job. And that's why they be bringing people from outside of the country or hiring people who are not Americans for these jobs. That do not be the truth all the time. And we also need to have a conversation about them fucking outsourcing. Okay, outsourcing American jobs. There's some jobs that they lie and say it's costing companies so much money. The salaries. I feel like they should make outsourcing illegal. Okay? A lot of companies, they completely downsize and save millions of dollars because they do not want to hire Americans. Okay? They don't want to spend that money. We're going to get our fucking money. But they take their ass over there to them call centers in India or wherever they have them, and they're paying these people well below what they would pay Americans. And while I am glad that those people have the opportunity, it also takes away jobs from over here. We need to have a realistic conversation about that shit too. And maybe the government should be worried about that and how the companies are outsourcing and saving millions of dollars and not putting money in the fucking hands of Americans instead of fucking Jimmy Kimmel.
So at the end of the day, this move by President Trump is more than just a visa fee hike, It is a shift that could redefine America's role in global economy. So for Indians who make up the backbone of the HIB system, it feels like the American dream is slipping away. So many of them come to the US with hopes of building a future, contributing innovation, and creating opportunities, not just for themselves, but for the country they choose to work in. So for US companies and healthcare sector, this could be a major setback because these industries have long relied on global talents to remain competitive. So $100,000 fee per worker could force companies to rethink their strategies, either by cutting on hiring or by moving operations overseas. So in the long run, this may weaken America's ability to attract the best minds while strengthening countries like Canada, the UK, or the UAE, who are ready to welcome these talents with open arms. And politically, this order sends a clear message. Also, Trump's America's First slogan is alive and well. Also, his supporters feel like this is a bold step in prioritizing American workers, but critics argue it's a short-sighted that could harm the very economy he claims to protect. So one thing is certain, the global competition for skilled workers just got more intense, and the US may have handed its major rivals an advantage. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.